Frank Raymond Ferney, aviation metalsmith chief. So we picked Whidbey Island, Washington for the A6 squadrons, the new A6s that were coming in that were being used in Vietnam. So I went to the A6 school up at Whidbey Island. Her and I drove up there and took our equipment up there. I went to school up there and ended up going to VA 115, which was an A6 squadron, which was getting ready to deploy to Vietnam on the USS Midway. And while I was up there, I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to be gone for 6 months to Vietnam, maybe 8. Need you to get home. We had the baby while we were there. So we packed her up, put her on an airplane. She flew out. She was gone. I was there by myself. We transported back down to Alameda where the Midway was. That's where we were headed. That's where the ship took out. So back to Alameda I went, got on that ship, went out to sea for a carrier call, which is probably a 4 to 5 week deployment where they get you warmed up before you go on an 8-month deployment. So while I was out there on this 4-week deployment, you got to remember in the Navy you have a 2-year sea duty and a 2-year shore duty. I was on sea duty the minute I left boot camp, okay, because I went to that school. While I was out on the 5-week tour, flying, they were flying the A6s, the chief came out and said, come on up to personnel. I went up there and he said, guess what? You're not going with us. You are out of sea duty. You're done. You did your sea duty. So off I went. When we got back into the port, all my guys went back home for a week before they had to leave. I went back and stayed there until I got my new orders, which was here, Pax River, Maryland. That was my first choice. She was already in Pittsburgh, so I picked the closest place that I could get to, because I only expected to be in 4 years. I did not ever think I was going to remain in the Navy for 20 years. So she's back in Pittsburgh. I come zooming back. I drove back with all our gear on the trailer, drove back, got to Pittsburgh. We drove down here in 1971. This all happened because I've been on sea duty for those 2 years. 71, we arrive here at Pax River, and I go to my first duty station, which was Strike. There's a division here on base called Strike, and it's with force warfare. So my job there as a metalsmith was we brought a lot of the airplanes that were in Vietnam, and the pilots that came back got that for shore duty. So I hung out with all these airplanes that had holes in them and fixed them, and a lot of the pilots that flew them were Vietnam veterans that flew combat. And I, at that point, signed up for a maintenance flying position where I could get half skins. Skins is flight pay. If you're a maintenance person, you can get half skins, which is half the flight pay. And you had to have 4 hours a month in order to earn that. So I'd be working down at work, fixing things, doing post flights, dailies and all that. And what we would do is that maintenance control would call over and say, Ferney, come over to maintenance. I go over and say, we got a plane that's broke down in Pensacola, Florida. We need you to go there. Get your tool bag. I'd call her up and say, I'm not going to be home tonight. So I grab my bag and walk out, and the pilot would get my flight suit on, the helmet. Pilot would show up, he'd combat veteran, because I'd know him, and he'd say, come on, we're going in the F4. I said, okay, the F4 Phantom, which was one of the big workhorses in Vietnam. So we opened the radome, I put my bag in there and secure it down, shut the radome down, I'd get in the back seat, took off out of Pax River, and I was in Pensacola, Florida, probably within an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm on the flight deck down there, on the flight line. And what a trip, that flying in that F4. But anyways, I had to get out, go over, fix the A3 at the time. It was an A3. Put a brake on it, got it all done, went to the barracks. Next morning we flew back. Came back up here. I was in this WST for probably about 3 years. Well, I had to ship over, so what happened was my time was coming up. My 4 years was coming up in '72. So I had a choice to make.